Good morning. Labour is coming under pressure from the unions and some MPs after Shadow Minister Sam Tarry was sacked from the front bench after he joined railway workers on the picket line. Labour says he was removed for making unauthorised TV appearances, including this interview with us yesterday morning. Here's a reminder of what he had to say.
I've not been insubordinate to anyone. I support Keir Starmer. I think he's by far the best person to be Prime Minister of this country. I believe he will be the Prime Minister of this country. My job today is to support transport workers as a Shadow Transport Minister, to support the travelling public. Every worker deserves a pay rise that is in line with inflation. And at the moment, the RMT and TSA have been offered 4% this year, and inflation's running at 11%, and then a 2% on the following 2 years. That is a real terms pay cut. No worker should be offered a pay cut as a way forward whilst having a sort of gun put to their head in terms of losing their jobs.
Time yesterday, Keir Starmer was watching. He didn't like what he saw. John McDonnell, the party's former Shadow Chancellor, is with us. Hello to you. Thanks for joining us on the programme. What did you make of what's happened over the last 24 hours?
I don't know who's advising Keir Starmer, but this is a completely unnecessary row that's been invented just at a time when the Tories are tearing themselves apart, and we've got the maximum opportunity, I think, to gain an advantage in the polls that'll take us, build the support to take us into a government. We're having this completely unnecessary row. It's, as I said, Sam went on the picket lines like minister after minister, shadow minister after shadow minister over the years in support of workers who are asking for a decent pay rise. It's a just cause. And now we're told he's been sacked not because he went on the picket lines, but because he made statements on the picket lines. But what was he supposed to do? Go on there and wear a gag? It's a silly situation to get into. So I think we just need to accept that there will be a wave of industrial action now, inevitably from union after union, because their members are voting overwhelmingly for industrial action because they're saying we can't accept a pay cut. And we've got to come off the fence and be on the side of, well, a just cause. The workers, I think they've got it right. So this is an unnecessary dispute. And I regret whoever's advised Keir Starmer on this, I think has made a severe mistake.
He was sacked, we're told, because he was making up policy on the fly. It's not for a junior shadow minister to make up the policy of the opposition party.
Well, he's expressed a view about the dispute, which I think is the correct view. That's the first thing. But, you know, Rachel Reeves went on an interview last week and made up policy on rail nationalisation, which had to be contradicted by the shadow spokesperson on transport within hours. I didn't see Rachel Reeves being sacked. I just think this is an unnecessary division when we should be united. And, you know, the Tory leadership election is demonstrating how the Tories are ripping themselves apart. This is the time when we should have maximum unity and maximum solidarity for the support for our workers who are desperate to have a decent pay rise because they're being impacted upon so badly by this cost of living crisis.
What do you want the leader to do? He tells them not to go on the picket lines. They do anyway. Some of them are disciplined and, let me finish, sanctioned. And then they do it again. He's told them not to, and they do it again. Not only does he do that, he was the most senior of the Labour MPs that was there. He's albeit a junior shadow minister. Not only does he do that, he then goes on the telly, does a round of media rounds, and disagrees with the policy of the party. What do you want him to do?
Well, I think the advisors around Keir have dug us into a hole in the first place, unnecessarily, by telling people not to go on picket lines. The reality is, over the years, we were formed by the trade unions. So when the trade unions have a just cause, we support them. And this is a just cause. People are being impacted upon by the cost of living crisis. They don't want a wage cut. They're trying to negotiate, but they're being forced to take industrial action. So you back them. That's what we did in the P&O dispute. You know, the Labour Party came out in favour of the workers there because it was a just cause. Now, to dig ourselves into a hole like this, telling people they can't go on picket lines, was inevitably going to lead to something like this, a real mistake and division like this. I think it's time to back off and recognise the real issue is what working class people are going through at the moment, which is a terrible cost of living crisis. How do we solve it? We back them by getting inflation-proofed pay awards to support them. It's as simple as that. So I think mistakes have been made from the very beginning. We need to stand back, and actually start trying to secure unity across not just the whole labour and trade union movement, but across the country overall. I think Keir and his advisors have completely misread the situation. I think they've misread the mood within the labour and trade union movement, but I also think they've misread the mood amongst the general public, who also, there's millions of people out there who are now contemplating and voting for industrial action because they can't survive on the wages and the wage offer that they've been given. So we've got to back them because it's the just cause.
OK, so what would you say to those that suggest that actually what he's trying to do is make the party electable, which is what you and Jeremy Corbyn didn't manage to do?
Well, because what we're trying to do now is make the party electable. And one way of making it electable is making sure you secure the support of those millions of people out there who, like us, think actually it's wrong to impose a wage cut on people when there's a cost of living crisis like this. And what we're doing now is alienating people. When the election comes, you know, people will rightfully say, where were you when we needed you, when we were campaigning to prevent our wages being cut? That's all that this is about. I do think they've misread the public mood. I've certainly misread the mood within the labour and trade union movement. I've never seen this level of anger, but also, you know, this level of solidarity. Wave after wave of trade unions now are balloting. They're getting overwhelming results, people turning out in large numbers, and 90% voted for industrial action. We've never seen that before. Why? Because people are pretty angry and they're saying we can't live on these wages.
Well, they were given the opportunity, of course, weren't they, back in 2019, Mr McDonnell, and you presided over, with Jeremy Corbyn, the biggest loss for Labour since 1935.
But as you learn those lessons, it was a Brexit general election. Simple as that. We've moved on since then. And the issues that people are facing now are tough. It's a tough economic environment out there where people have had 12 years of pay freezes and pay cuts. They're now hit with inflation going up to 11%, and some of them are being offered 2 or 3% wage increases, which means a wage cut. Times have moved on since December 19. What we have to recognise is that people are suffering out there, and we've got to be seen to be on their side. And one way of being seen to be on their side is when they take industrial action, you support them, you join the picket lines, and you back them up. It's a basic principle of solidarity, not just in the labour and trade union movement, but actually I think it's at the heart of our society as well, where you support people when they've got a just cause.
RMT Union Chief Mick Lynch yesterday on the programme calling for a general strike. Would you support him in that?
Well, what's happening now, what's interesting, if you look at the ballots that are taking place across the trade union movement, we're talking about millions of workers now voting for industrial action. So naturally, what people are saying is, well, why not coordinate that? Well, I support coordinated action because if that results then in a decent pay rise for people, they're protected against the cost of living crisis. I think that's the most effective thing to do. But, you know, this is completely unnecessary. What it needs is the government to recognise that you can't expect people to have to stand on one side when their wages are being cut. You know, it's tough out there. People are struggling to survive, keep up with the rents, the mortgages, putting food on the table for their children. We can't go on like this. We've got to protect people. And that's why people are saying, well, we're going to have to take industrial action. And if that means coordinated action to make it more effective and to resolve the disputes that's much more quickly, well, so be it.
So you would support a call for a general strike. We haven't had one of those since 1928.
Well, I don't think it would be necessary if we had a government that recognised just how tough it is for people out there. You can't expect people to have a pay cut when prices are going up. So, well, 11%, and you know, for some people that's even higher. So you can understand why people are angry. You can understand why they vote for industrial action, and you can understand why unions are saying if we are going to strike, we might as well coordinate that action. So coordinated action, I think, is going to be inevitable. And I just hope the government starts listening. If there are picket lines that are caused as a result of that, I think the role of a Labour MP is to be on those picket lines. And that's what I've been doing because it's a just cause. And I support working people when they're suffering in this way. The resolution of it is in the hands of the government. Just protect people against this cost of living crisis.
Yeah, the last time we had coordinated action, it wasn't a general strike, but coordinated action amongst unions was 1978-79, and I'm sure it was a Labour government that was in power then.
Well, that's exactly the point I'm trying to make, really.
Okay,
If
well,
it's a
I'm not
just,
getting it if you are. Go on, try again.
no, well, if it's a just cause, what you have to do is support the cause. If you think it's the right thing to do, it doesn't really matter who's in government. You have to ensure that you do the right thing. And the right thing at the moment is to recognise that working class people are suffering at the moment. To have a government then imposing a pay cut on them when there's a cost of living crisis like this is completely wrong. And therefore, people are reacting against it. And they're using what method is left open to them, which is to withdraw their labour to go on strike. So therefore, if it's a just cause, you support them. And in that way, you can resolve the disputes, you can make sure people get a decent pay rise, and you help them through this cost of living crisis.
Okay.
People
Okay,
are not
got it.
asking for the earth, they're just asking to help us get through this coming crisis.
Okay.